Hello and welcome to this, our quarterfinals here at English Nationals. We have a whole variety of different types of standard decks in our feature match area. We also have a few people who've played on national teams before. Dan Gardner, he's had some pretty successful runs at nationals previously. Meanwhile, his opponent Ross Broxup on Mardu vehicles, which seems to be the most popular deck in this top 8 at very least. Less experience, but potentially a deck that is up to that task.
Indeed, this is an interesting matchup. The Grixis control deck is pretty much kind of a greedy matchup between the blue-black control deck we saw Robin Molar win his Grand Prix with, and the traditional blue-red list. So basically, it's you get the red removals in Harness, Lightning, and Abrade to kind of cover up the weaknesses of the black removal spells, while trying to get the black for the Scarab God and potentially even a Nicol Bolas in there. So the way this plays out is that the red removals are quite good against the Mardu vehicles deck. Abrade is of course excellent against Heart of Tron. It's very good at especially killing Edith's Sphere Harvester. I mean, the black removal spells Grasping Dart and Pay to Push kills Heart too, but it has a lot of trouble getting a Edith's Sphere Harvester off the battlefield.
Well, looking at the way that things have kicked off here, Ross Broxup on the play has been able to make the most of that early start. Gets the early Toolcraft Exemplar, Hearts of Kieran, and lots of copies of Thraben Inspector. This is kind of what the aggressive vehicles deck wants to be doing when it's got the play.
Yeah, this is an excellent draw for Ross Broxup. I'm not sure whether Daniel Gardner has Sweltering Souls in his main deck.
He has two.
Okay, so that would be excellent. Oh, here we go. Look at this. Getting 4 creatures, sure, you got clues from those Thraben Inspectors, but they're not 3 cards right into your hand. You have to pay mana to kind of get those cards back. And if he's going to do that, it's not going to push pressure on Daniel Gardner that might just go ahead and take that time and tempo to gain card advantage. I believe we're going to say Veteran Motorist here since he took 1 damage off the Spiral of Industry.
Well, that means a hit for 5 from Heart of Kieran.
Yeah, it's probably the best card he could have had. Maybe something like the Paula, but we know that Ross doesn't play any of the Paulas in his version. So Veteran Motorist in for 5, and it's actually represented lethal on Daniel Gardner's 4th turn.
Yeah, Gardner came 6th in the Swiss. That meant that he knew that he was going to be on the draw in this matchup, and Ross Broxup really able to capitalize on that. The early start with lots of 1-drops plus a Heart of Kieran gave him a little bit of defense against that first mass removal spell. Lethal potentially coming through here. Is Daniel Gardner able to stop it?
Yeah, he has the Abrade here, and that's the only removal spell in Daniel's deck that can actually take care of this 5/5 Heart, because Daniel doesn't have any energy here currently, and we can see the little dance there between should I activate my Heart? Is it more important that the crew I do have to kind of crew it? But he goes for it, which is, I think, a respectable play at this point, and attacks. Here we have a possibility for Daniel to play a Scarab God, which might kind of pull him ahead in this game. However, if we can see a License Integration from Ross, this is Nights Out and untapping very quickly, so I believe we're going to see it here.
Takes a point from Spire of Industry.
Yep.
There's Unlicensed Disintegration, and, well, that'll do it.
I call them as I see them.
A lightning-fast game one there. Talking quickly, playing quickly. A little shake of the head there from Dan Gardner. He knows that basically on the draw he was never in a million years winning that game. Yeah. And now we get to see some dwarf-on-dwarf violence. Quentin Martin's red-white vehicles up against Brendan Edwards' Mardu vehicles. 2 copies of Veteran Motorist alongside Hearts of Kieran. So Hearts of Kieran getting to attack in as a 6/6. Meanwhile, you've got Dapala working with Hearts of Kieran. So Quentin's Heart of Kieran, the smaller one for now, but Dapala potentially drawing him into a lot of threats.
Yeah, so I'm not actually sure which matchup or which side is favored here. Walking Ballista is very good in this matchup, killing off small dwarfs. However, Dapala is on the table, meaning it will protect the X1s against, say, a Walking Ballista. And Quentin's mana base is a little bit better, and he has 40 Sphere Harvesters, which are good in the mirror, and I believe he has a couple of Gideons too, which are probably the best card in the mirror, actually. Back in the days when Felidar Guardian and Celerai was around, Gideon was kind of the go-to only card that actually mattered, followed up by Archangel Avacyn, because she was really hard to deal with in the, and she dealt with Gideons. So, but it seems like Brendan is quite ahead here.
He does have copies of Unlicensed Disintegration in hand, which could be very problematic.
It's very problematic. As far as you're behind and trying to block Unlicensed Disintegration, it's just can be a total blowout.
So Quentin Martin there using a Quentin Martin Pro Player card to keep track of his energy, and I think that he might be wearing literally the exact same jumper in that picture that he's wearing today.
Oop, no play card for you.
We're
going to use an actual energy.
Real energy, I'm afraid, Quentin. Sorry about that.
Yep. Yeah, I think this is going to be pretty much it. I don't believe Quentin has it. If he doesn't have I guess I can see an Abrade in his hand here. So this is not lights out yet. Without that Abrade, unlicensed integration would spell lethal. It doesn't seem like it has it. We'll see how he times this Abrade. I think that's going to be the interesting part of this game. Whether Brendan's going to pull the trigger off that unlicensed integration. A big problem for Martin is if Brendan draws a land here, it actually has mana for Archangel Avacyn. And that means with 2 crewers, it's going to be impossible to kill that Heart of Carrion. Say that the cruise and respond with Array, cruise again, and Archangel Avacyn, boom, that's 6 damage right there.
Alright, looks like Quentin does fancy an attack here with Heart of Carrion. Technically, yes, your Depala triggers. Whether or not he'll be tempted to spend any of that mana on Depala, not quite sure.
So this is interesting. Either he can use the Veteran Motorist or the Depala here to attack. He's maybe thinking that he can wait a little bit by pulling the trigger on the Braid if he chooses to keep his Veteran Motorist up. Also, it serves as a better blocker for an eventual Veteran Motorist attack, but I believe this Heart is definitely going to get crewed, so we're not going to see that. So we'll see if he gets punished for waiting with this Abrade by Brendan drawing a land. Ooh, he does draw a land.
Hub.
And we'll see whether Brendan is a little bit too trigger happy to destroy that Heart of Kieran before blockers. Ooh, it seems like he's doing something.
Scrappy Scrounger.
Yeah, he goes for the... I don't like this route because he knows that this disintegration is going to be lethal whether it kills a creature or not. And this way... Yeah, I guess he's still going to have an artifact back for disintegration with that Scrounger. So it's actually not too bad here. I don't think that Quentin can get out of this hole actually. He only has 1 blocker. He can either crew or he can block with the Veteran Motorist. And I would assume he crews here with the reason that otherwise it's just lethal on the board, meaning he has pulled the trigger first. So say that's a cruise, there will be unlicensed integration. And then Quentin, of course, can Abrade, but it's still going to take 3 damage plus those extra 6 coming across the red zone. So I think this is 9's out, actually. You might get punished for that attack with Depala the earlier turn.
Yeah, and this is, I guess, one of those matches where figuring out if you're the beatdown or not is very important. And that will be more draw-dependent than anything else, I would guess, given how similar these lists are.
Totally correct, Tim. And it kind of gives away that Quentin definitely has a 2-mana removal, given that he used this Depala and did not do anything with the trigger on the stack, meaning he wants to use those 2 mana for something else. And that's also another draw to kind of not actually tapping the Depala and trying to conceal a bit of information. And I think this is now Quentin is tapped out. It's going to be a pretty easy, well, it seems like he actually gets around lethal here by blocking first before using a Braid. It's a good play for Quentin, kind of sniffing out that unlicensed integration. Quite an unconventional play, I would say, but I mean, it works for him here.
Lovely stuff. So now Brendan Edwards is the one just making sure that he knows the exact right way of resolving all this. Decides that he is going to let Heart of Kieran go bye-bye.
Yeah, I believe we're going to see a disintegration on this Depala before Quentin can untap. That's what I would... It's possible that he can hold on to it, but it kind of leaves the Scrappy Scrounger in the fear of getting destroyed in response, losing out on those free precious damage. I mean, when your opponent's 4, that's kind of crucial.
Yeah, 1 point of life left for Quentin Martin. He's got a lot of work to do if he's going to dig his way out of this hole.
Yeah, he played it well though. He has actually a chance here. He can double spell with these Edgeode Miners. And he should be able to stay alive, at least on the board. This Avacyn is going to... I mean, it's going to be some problematic to get rid of that. Though.
Yeah, Quentin just making sure that he's not missed, say, any creature lands sat in the land zone for Brendan Edwards. Because at this stage, there's nothing to hide in terms of any spells in deck. Each player has got access to deck lists, but he still needs to be a little bit careful just about making sure that he sequences things correctly. We will be jumping back to our main match shortly. Given that Quentin's on 1, we might just give him the good grace of seeing whether or not he's able to pull this out in the next turn or so. Brendan Edwards just giving Ether Geode Miner a little read there. Slightly unusual one. It has the opportunity to attack, and then if things go badly, it can flicker itself out.
Alright, so I believe we're gonna see attack with both here, netting a 3, chump block from one of the miners, together with the Avacyn.
Yeah, no straightforward unlicensed disintegration to just get the win here.
Nope.
There we can see the Ether Geode Miner. It's such a jolly little scout.
Seems very happy.
Pretty solid at crewing up whichever vehicles Quentin wishes. Also findable with Depala, pumped by Depala. A number of good things to say about the miner.
Has a lot of synergy here. I mean, you can attack with it, get into energy. Post combat, you can flicker it, so you can protect yourself by crewing something. You also get energy for those harness lightnings, I believe you play, and those Aether hubs to make his mana better. He also has Aether Sphere Harvesters, which also takes energy. So there is a number of things going on, as Tim just mentioned here.
Aether Sphere Harvester in hand as well. If Quentin's going to find a way out of this, then gaining a little bit of life has to be part of that equation.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like him waiting here with the Avacyn.
Yeah, I mean, how many cards are there that Brendan Edwards would hold in hand here?
This kind of leaves him up to getting Avacyn. I mean, that an Avacyn is going to be... Alright, so attacks with everything. And this attack is 3 with the miners, because you can flicker them if you want to, and you gain 2 extra energy on attack. So I believe we're going to see an Avacyn here trying to block the heart. That means Quentin has his play pretty much cut out for him. He's going to flicker both of the miners, play an Aether Sphere Harvester, which can't block the Avacyn. And this way he's not going to get any... I mean, this heart, I guess, is what he's going to get instead, which is, of course, important, but... This was not a sure play. I mean, if Quentin has one of his stasis there, this is a disaster.
So, blocks coming from Brendan.
Yep. Good attack, however. I mean, you could maybe sniff out the Avacyn, but by just attacking with the miners. This way he actually gets 3 damage through. Yeah, interesting to see how this is going to turn out. I believe it's going to take a more couple of turns before the game is over. I mean, Brendan can kind of make it lights out as soon as he draws a removal spell, but I mean, he doesn't have that yet.
So a literal or maybe just a figurative knock on the top of the deck. Finds a land off the top there.
I believe he has a Veteran Motorist in hand as well. It's going to help him search for any kind of interaction to kind of deal with the final point of damage here.
Yeah, a little bit of frustration for him that he can't just cleanly close this one out.
Yeah. However, if he attacks with, say, all his creatures, Quentin will have to block some of the ground attackers, and that means that Avacyn will flip next turn, and it's gonna deal 3 damage. However, he's gonna gain 3 life from the Aether Sphere Harvester. And he can actually block all this because he can flickers, miner, crew the Aether Sphere Harvester, and then flicker it again to block. So he's not dead to the trigger just yet. If he does it this way. This spends all of his energy, but I think that's his only option to stay alive. I guess another possibility actually is that he could block with one of his miners and the Aether Sphere Harvester. Harvester on Avacyn, miner on one of the creatures, and then it flickers that miner, and that actually means that Avacyn will not flip this turn.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on, and the miner is definitely putting in some work here.
I mean, the miners can't block Avacyn because the miners don't fly, though, right?
That is very true, but Harvester blocks Avacyn just fine.
Yes.
Yeah, Quentin playing this quite well, I must say. I think a lot of people would have lost a few turns ago, trying to maximize, you know, their kind of value from coming back into the game. And next turn we're gonna have another free attack of double miner, I believe. Yep. All right. So it goes up to 4, but goes down to 1 again.
Yeah, no need to change those life totals. Just shortcutting a little bit there. follow-up play from Brendan here, looking to try and put the lights out. Plays the veteran motorist, gets to scry 2.
Gideon works.
And another Toolcaster Exemplar.
The thing that Gideon does here is basically it can give +1/+1 to especially the Avacyn, meaning it will attack through that Aegis or Harvester just fine and they won't bounce off each other. Which is, of course, crucial here.
One on top, one on bottom. No massive surprises given that we know what's going on there. And Quentin Martin untaps. He's managed to make it through one turn. No energy left, though, and he could really use some because his Ethersphere Harvester is his one source of gaining some extra life. No great attacks with it, though, that he can actually expect to hit Brendan Edwards' life total with. In total, he might be able to get something going here, though. It's definitely looking very close indeed.
Yeah, he still has those miners, which can gain him a bit more energy for his Harvester. However, it's very likely that we'll have to blink both of them if he attacks with both of them, because I would like Brendan to block one of each on the miners if he attacks with both. Sure, that it becomes a little bit more scary to say that he has a damage. Ooh, is that a stasis there I'm seeing? I can actually turn the game back. The way Stasis Snare is going to work here, he's thinking about whether he should cast Stasis Snare before combat or not, or if it's going to gain more value from Brendan going for something in his own turn.
And I guess that keeping Stasis Snare up means that if Brendan decides he wants to get greedy and find a way of letting a creature die so that Avacyn transforms, he can create just a fantastic trap that effectively generates him a little bit of much needed card advantage.
That, and also I believe that so there's a couple of things going on here. Basically, Brendan played a veteran motorist and he topped twice, so there's a chance he has maybe unlicensed integration, and being able to stasis snare the Scrapper's Crown in response is of course crucial, because that's his only artifact in play, meaning disintegration won't deal 3 damage. He can also stasis snare in his main phase, meaning he can attack with both miner. Avacyn is going to block one of them, he's going to blink it, but he's going to gain 2 energy, meaning that this Aegis Harvester can actually start gaining some life again. There's a ton of things going on here. And I mean, Quentin also has a Gideon in his hand that he would like to deploy and start kind of, coming back into the game every turn he's going to activate the Gideon. So this is not an easy turn at all.
Alright, so we're seeing a Stasis Snare here. Step 1, he's casting it. Step 2, what is the target? I mean, Avacyn seems like the biggest threat on this board by a fairly clear margin. Looks like that is what he's going for.
Yep. And we're going to trigger Toolcraft. And the way you can do it is you can crew the Aegisphere Harvester and then you can attack with the miners. Okay. He could also attack with Aegisphere Harvester, kind of gain life this turn, but it's a scary proposition.
So he's held back the Aether Harvester. That means that he's got the potential to, at some point, flicker an Aether Geode Miner, use it to crew the Aether Harvester and gain some life on defense.
Ooh, this block is... I don't think this block is great. I would have liked to see the block of a miner here instead. Just so he has to flicker it in his turn. And this way, he's going to get that 2 energy, and it's basically like they have Vigilance.
Alright, the life totals are 1-1. Quentin knows that Brendan left 1 card on top of his deck from the veteran motorist. Now he's going to get a chance to find out what it is.
Yeah, and this Gideon is looking a whole lot worse than it was looking before. So, I believe that Quentin actually... Ooh. Okay, so... accidentally flicking planes off the top of his library.
I believe that planes was not a card that either player knew.
Nope. And I believe the judges will have to shuffle Brendan's deck. However, they had to figure out how many cards were scried on the bottom before doing so. So that's what they're kind of counting out, the number of veteran motorists now.
At least 1 card got put on the bottom last turn, but I wouldn't want to have to try and keep count of all of this.
That's a good question. I, for one, do not know. So why do you think that he blinked his miner in the upkeep? Maybe he's scared of a removal in response to the blink, but I'm not sure if... Yeah.
I'm not sure how many removal spells he survives against this way that he would otherwise lose against.
Very true. I mean, 1 removal spell on this Aegisphere Harvester was kind of spell Knights out here, even if it blinks the miner.
All right, so they determined that 2 cards have been scryed to the bottom, so those stay at the bottom, and then the rest of Brendan Edwards' deck getting shuffled. I'm sure that Quentin wouldn't have minded too much if it had just been an extra planes on top for Brendan, because, to be perfectly honest, that one of the least scary cards left in the Mardu Vehicles deck for Brendan to be drawing.
So this turn is interesting, right? Brendan is on 1 here, and I mean, he's facing down lethal on the other side. So I think Quentin is going to be able to take this. Super well done comeback, I believe.
Yeah, this is the kind of game that really separates the good players from the great players. Yeah. Plenty of people in Quentin's position at the point that we heard that the other match was about to start and were given the choice of which one to watch. I think that if we had left that one and then told you, oh, by the way, Quentin won that game, there might be a few people in chat that might have been a little unhappy. I know that some of you are very keen to see that other match. We will jump back to it when we can, but right now we're where the party should be.
Yeah, this match has been super exciting. A lot of small micromanagement and sequencing kind of plays. And some, I would say, sequencing plays from Brendan's side that has been a mistake. It's kind of let Quentin kind of play very, very tight and be able to come back into the game. And now Quentin should know that that Brendan does have... Okay, I guess he... Wait, hold on. I think I misspoke too early. This should actually be lethal if Quentin doesn't have a 1-mana removal spell, which we know he doesn't.
Well, he's already got 1 blocker, and he can flicker to make a second blocker, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. I was thinking the lifelink would matter more here, but I believe that's the way to do it. He's got to flicker one of the miners, block with the harvester, and block with the miner, and he finds the play, and he's going to block both of them. If he would just go for the kind of lifelink of either Sphere Harvester, that would still be exactly lethal, because both these creatures deal 4 damage right now.
A little thumbs up from Brendan Edwards, kind of half-heartedly, I would imagine, because you know what? This is him seeing a game where he looked in firm control just a few turns ago, and now Quentin Martin looks to have found a way of navigating his way to a 1-0 lead. Has to be unafraid at this point of the remaining card left in Brendan Edwards' hands. If it was anything, then it would have been a good one. Quentin Martin token, Cruise, Aethersphere Harvester, and you can see there a little clap of the hands from a very happy Quentin Martin. Finds a way of taking game 1. And we get to jump back and see how things are going for Dan Gardner in game 2. He faced a very quick start in game 1, but there's a Goblin Dark Dwellers up against the Scarab God here
I haven't
in
seen
game
that
2.
guy in a while. I mean, look at Ross's graveyard too. There's a Kumble there. There's a Liliana Last Hope. I mean, there's so much spice in this deck list.
Yeah, welcome to Mardu Spice Control.
Yeah.
And the menace of that Goblin Dark Dwellers, pretty important here as at the moment, Daniel Gardner with just the 1 creature, though one must think that there must be some creature somewhere in one of these graveyards that can help out.
Yeah. It's a very scary card, however, for your if your opponents manage to get it back with Goblin Dark Dwellers.
Looks like he may have cast 2 Unlicensed Disintegrations thanks to some help from that Goblin Dark Dwellers. Just 1 card exiled at the moment for Ross Broxup.
So this game is pretty much about Ross being able to kind of burn Daniel out. Because this Scarab God is, I mean, nobody's really threatening Scarab God on the board. It's very hard to come back because it's gonna keep coming back if you don't have an Anguish on making. But you don't really run too many of those usually, and we can see one in Ross's graveyard. As we can see, this was the end of Ross's turn, which kind of limits his option even more. Yeah, I think this is gonna be exceedingly difficult to come back from. Daniel can also bring back a Campbell in, say, his main phase or in Ross's Broxum's upkeep, meaning that if Ross's uses any kind of instant speed interaction to kind of cheese this game out, he's going to gain 2 and deal 2 damage to Ross.
Yeah, Campbell, a really interesting card that's not in most Mardu lists that we've seen, but seems an interesting choice that might be paying dividends here for Ross Broxup.
Yep, and I mean, this is a lethal attack, so Ross is going to have something. Alright, well, Shambling Events is on the board. I'm sure that Daniel has a plethora of answers for the Shambling Events before blocker, and here we can see one of them.
And a braid there. That's enough to square things up. Dan Gardner goes to 1-1 in his quarterfinals against Ross Broxup. He lost to the quick attacks in game 1. He will be back on the draw, though, for game 3. So a little bit of work still for each of these players as they go into the deciding games of these quarterfinals. Remember that effectively, for this Nationals tournament, the important thing is if you can make it to the finals, that means that you're going to be going to Nice as part of the World Magic Cup team. And of course, if you win the finals, then you get to do so as the English national champion. We're going to get a chance to see a little bit more Magic from one of our other tables here. This is Autumn Burchett. She was the #1 seed up against Niels Molar. Niels, the English national champion. He is the team captain, I apologise. He's the guy that got the most pro points for England this year, and he is looking to do the double, also winning the national championships. It's vehicles against 4-colour energy, the 4th colour mainly just being for a Scarab God in what is otherwise a Team O list.
Yeah, I believe, however, he's going to have his... I mean, this is going to be a tough road, because we can see a turn 2 Cub and a bunch of removals following it up. Neutralizing that 2 crafting exemplar, we can see another one in the graveyard plus a heart. So Niels kind of has to play some kind of artifact this turn to make Toolcraft into a threat. However, even if it does so, Autumn is the one winning the race and by quite a lot of margin here. Yeah, we can maybe even see a braid on this clue token before combat, or just a removal on the okay. It seems like Autumn is gonna be the aggressor and kind of take care of that Fraven Inspector end of turn instead to get the damage in.
I mean, Niels here, one of the big stories is he's simply not seen enough lands. He's got 2 lands in play. One of those lands, if he taps it for red mana, will be dealing little points of damage to him also. Not where you want to be when you're already in a straightforward race. And a Whirl of Virtuoso there, enough for the handshake. Niels Molar going down in a straight 2 games to Autumn Burchett. She was the #1 seed going into this top 8, and you know what? She just keeps on trucking. Just one more match win for Autumn Burchett, and she will be going to Nice alongside Niels Molar, because Niels, of course, is the captain of Team England. We will be seeing him representing for England, and we will get a chance to find out who his compatriots will be soon enough.
Yeah, I feel for Niels Small losing in the quarterfinals as a captain. It seems to be a trend that keeps on rolling.
Are we going to see anyone do the double? It'd be pretty cool.
I think, let's say Yuya was the captain in Japan, but I think he let his friend Shoda get into the finals in the semifinals instead.
I believe so, yeah.
So he kind of gave up a chance to do the double. Otherwise, I don't think anybody else has kind of done it.
Come on, Reed. Maybe you'll do it.
It's very possible. We'll see next weekend.
We absolutely will. In the meantime, though, you can see their players just shuffling up. We haven't got any more Magic to bring you right this second, but rest assured, whichever of these matches kicks off first, we will do our best to jump across to.
Very rude to time the way you shuffle at the same time.
Yeah, synchronized shuffling, the bane of coverage teams everywhere. We will make sure to bring you as much Magic as we can. I'm still kind of reeling from that game where Quentin Martin was able to stay alive and win back from what appeared to be a pretty solidly losing position. Lots of very cool tricks with Ether Geode Miner. That a card that I had not seen a huge amount of in Constructed previously, but proving its worth there in the sort of pseudo mirror, I'm going to call it. I'm going to call Quentin's deck dwarves, I think, at this point, rather than vehicles, because there are more dwarves than vehicles in there. He's got a dwarf lord in there. It's
4 Toolcrafts, 4 Veremotus, 3 miners,
and Depala,
and 2 Depalas, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of dwarves.
Yeah, that's a lot of dwarves. Isn't that what, 13?
Something like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's more than 8 vehicles. So, well, there we go.
And 8 already kind of the high watermark for vehicles in most cases also.
So it seems like Zombies is not the only tribal deck in this top 8.
I like it. And of course, with Ixalan, I'm sure we're going to see plenty more tribal decks. Will it be pirates? Will it be zombies? Sorry, will it be pirates? Will it be dinosaurs? Will it be vampires, not zombies? Or indeed merfolk?
Yeah, we'll see. I'm putting my bet on dinosaurs or pirates.
I think that all of them look like they got potential. Personally, though, I'm going to be having a bash with some dinosaurs just because they seem like a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right, so player shuffling. It seems like Quentin
It looks like there may have just been a restroom break for Quentin's opponent here.
I believe so.
So it looks like we might be able to get Dan Gardner's match back up first, but it's a crazy race to see who gets to be on camera, and of course we all win when that happens because we get to watch a little bit more magic.
Excellent.
Autumn Burchett already dispatching her opponent, relatively straightforward. You can see Pete Ward in the background, not quite clear on exactly where they are in the match on the back table, but if we get updates on that, we will let you know.
Yeah, all right, so players drawing their opening hands.
Yeah, let's jump back and see how Dan Gardner is getting on in his matchup up against Ross there.
So I believe both players have kept their opening 7s.
Looks like we will be moving Pete Ward across as well, but in the meantime, Ross Broxup against Dan Gardner. It's 1-1. Ross on the play was absolutely dominant in game 1. Doesn't have a 1-drop, does have a 2 though. Scrap Heap Scrounger, a pretty tenacious threat against a deck chock full of removal.
Yeah, if you have 5 1-drops in the first game, maybe you're not going to have one in the third game. That just seems about fair.
Is that how it works? I've never been a big one for the maths. So Ether Hub coming down.
Don't go too technical on me here.
Scrap Heap Scrounger getting stuck in. Daniel Gardner, is he going to be taking a bit of damage here? Using removal on a Scrap Heap Scrounger gets a bit messy, but if those are the only creatures that Ross has, then sooner or later Dan Gardner may have to pull the trigger.
So double Scrounger here sure is good, but they kind of have diminishing returns. I mean, the first Scrounger is not going to be as useful as the second one, given that you have to remove another creature in your yard, and if Scrounger is the only other creature in your yard, I mean, the first one is just going to be a 3/2 count block.
Yeah, I mean, basically they're all hungry for the same food at some point.
Yeah, and there's a very limited amount of food, depending on how long the match goes.
This is the saddest story I've ever heard. So 3 more damage coming through at Dan Gardner here. It looks like for now he's going to take it.
Yeah, we can see actually Dan has a pretty good hand. I believe he has Supreme Will. I think I saw a Glimmer of Genius in there too. And Dan is actually thinking about whether this is worth countering, but he elects to do so. In the end, I'm pretty okay. So he has a Fetid Pools, Either Hub, which he just plays, Springleaf, Spiral Bluff, Canal, a Braid, Glimmer of Genius. So his hand is lining up pretty well. There's lands he needs. You always want to cast a Glimmer on turn 4, plus a removal spell. So hopefully he can find some of his horror hitters, and maybe say a counter spell towards something like a Gideon, which would be a super scary threat here if it came out.
Now, Dan Gardner, when he previously had success at Nationals, it was with control that was using Baneslayer Angel as the win condition. Things have moved on a little bit since then, but we know that he doesn't mind tapping out for a threat here and there. Glimmer of Genius coming down. Meanwhile, on the other side, Kemble, Consul of Allocation, is in play now. So whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, that player loses 2 life and you gain 2. Not too many creature spells compared to non-creature spells for Dan Gardner. So,
speaking of heavy hitters, though, I believe Daniel drew a Scarab God for this turn, and we have the Scarab God in play. I mean, you don't have to cast a whole lot of non-creature spells.
That's fair enough. Yeah, you've got other better things to do with your mana. It may be that before that Scrap Heap Scrounger gets a chance to get eaten to come back, eat something to come back, that Dan just gets to eat the opposing graveyard first.
So this is an interesting situation, right? Dan has a choice whether he wants to Sweltering Suns this Scrounger and this Campbell, or if he can cast Scarab God. Basically, casting Scarab God has a way higher... Oh, shit. And it has a higher upside, and whether... I mean, if he plays Scarab God, and he can then play the Sweltering Suns next turn, instead... he can kind of be ahead on the board, but if he's Sweltering Suns immediately, I mean, then Ross can maybe follow up with another big threat. So then it's going to be hard to, kind of stem the bleeding with the Scarab God. But if he plays Scarab God this turn and he beats, instead of, say, Unlicensed Integration or any other kind of removal spell, it's going to be super dangerous because it's going to take so much damage, and this Campbell is going to keep picking down its life total if it's going to take
there we see Sweltering Suns. It does deal with all the creatures on the battlefield, clears things out just for now. Ross Broxup will have to find a way of rebuilding based on whatever's in his hand. Meanwhile, Dan Gardner, a brief reprieve, has to just look on as Thraven Inspector comes down. That brings a clue. That means that in principle Ross Broxup can be drawing a few extra cards, getting something going. Dan Gardner just looking on. But as we hit the mid and late game, there are lots of big, powerful spells that Dan Gardner can deploy, and we'll see exactly which ones he goes with soon enough. Plenty to work with for Dan. 9 life, though. He needs to be a little bit careful about that life total, I would guess.
Yeah, I believe Dan is very happy that there was only a Thraben Inspector plus an activation of the Scrappy Scrounger on his turn. If there was, say, a Gideon or any other scary creature coming down when he actually was tapped out, this could have spelled doom for him. Okay, we see an Unlicensed Disintegration at the end of the turn here. I do not like this play particularly. If he would have instead returned the Scrappy Scrounger, he could have then played the Unlicensed Disintegration, dealing an extra 3 damage from the Scrappy Scrounger.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, putting Daniel at 2. And this way, he's going to deal a whole lot less damage. It really depends on if he has something very powerful to play this turn. It doesn't seem like he has it. So I think this might be a very costly misstep. He basically missed out on 3 damage here.
And with Daniel Gardner on 9, every point obviously counting quite a bit.
Yeah, this game can turn out to be a long grindfest. And if it comes down to that, Thraben Inspectors become more and more scary for every turn you go down on a low life total, and you don't want to spend your removals on killing a Thraben Inspector, really.
And it looks like Dan Gardner may have missed his trigger to return the Scarab God.
Yeah, so what happened here is that Ross Broxup cast his Scarab God at end of Daniel's turn, and the way Scarab God works is that it triggers at the beginning of your end step, I believe. And because he played it at the end of turn, it triggers on then Ross Brox's end step instead of his own.
Is the next end step, yes.
Right. Meaning that he would get a little bit later. However, I believe Daniel pointed out the trigger on Scarab God, and the trigger actually happens when the creature dies, I believe.
Okay.
So he got it back his Scarab God anyways, but some technicalities that happen here.
Yeah, important to be clear wherever possible with your opponents, just so that there's never ambiguity on those sorts of things. That meaning it all worked out kind of okay. Couple of mana up for Dan Gardner. Ross Broxup looking for those last few points to be able to close things out before the Scarab God can really get too much going.
Yeah, this is going to come down to the wire. Unfortunately, Daniel doesn't have a removal spell here, and if Ross would have brought back that Scrounger, he would have had lethal here. So this mistake is coming back to bite him, and bite him badly.
So here comes Scrap Heap Scrounger. Loves to crew a Heart of Kieran. That's what he's all about at this stage in the game.
So I believe Ross is... Okay. Ooh, I didn't see that Abrade in his hand. I thought he only had 2 lands and a Scarab God, but there we go.
Yeah, got a few other things going on to the Abrade. Pretty important there. New Heart of Kieran, though. Much like Doctor Who, Ross Broxup has 2 hearts.
Yeah, interestingly enough, it's actually important that Ross got to exile one of those Campbells, because otherwise Daniel could have brought it back with the Scarab God. And now he can't do that. Now his only target is Scrappy Scrounger, which he cannot block. It's not going to help him on this board, really. So I believe we can see... Maybe it's going to respond to get an extra Scry activation, but I kind of like not activating here in upkeep.
Just hoping to draw well?
Yeah, I mean, then he can also activate Fumarole and then activate the God end of turn. That's also an option. It kind of gives him another blocker. This way he gets to see more cards, but if he, say, draws a Torrential Gearhulk or something expensive to cast, he won't be able to cast that.
Well, he sees... Well, it's going to the bottom. I believe that was just a basic land, yeah, so draws for the turn. It's going to need to be a good one.
Well, it's an island. I mean, Daniel's not dead yet, but he is pretty close. I mean, like Gideon in Ross Broxup's hand is actually posting lethal if he emblems it. However, it is a very scary place in the face of open mana, because any kind of a braid for Daniel would mean kind of a disaster if he quote-unquote threw away his Gideon just for an emblem.
All right, so Ross here has to respect the fact that there's a control deck with mana open. He can't necessarily play around everything, so he just needs to work out what the key things are that he has to concern himself with. If there was the likes of a disallow, then crewing might make it tricky. Gideon forcing the issue here. Will Gideon resolve?
Well, Gideon will resolve, and if he does, which he will, Ross will know that Daniel doesn't have any counter spells, which is a pretty huge tell here. Okay, we'll see if he goes for it here. It's quite scary going for it because Gideon is very high value when it's actually in play. So it's very possible that Ross can take another turn and wait, and then have multiple threats on the board instead to kind of push the final damage here. And this is actually posing.
So you use Gideon to crew.
Yeah, this is also lethal.
And there's the handshake. Ross Broxup takes it, and you can see there the look of relief on his face. Nothing scarier than playing against a control player of Dan Gardner's caliber with cards in hand, mana open. Sometimes you had to go for it. Ross went for it, and it worked out. A little shake of the head there from Daniel. Another day, maybe next time. He's been to the big show before. I'm sure that we'll see him there again. And there's the smile. Ross knows that he's that much closer to potentially getting to go to Nice as part of the English national team. He's going to be advancing to the semi-finals, and of course, winners of the semi-finals, they get that golden ticket, and they get to join Niels Molar as they go to the World Magic Cup. So we see Marco Orsini-Jones just behind Daniel Gardner there, smiling, giving a bit of encouragement to his friend. He knows they've all been there before, and now we get a chance to look across at another match going on. We've got Mikhail Dimakos and Pete Ward. Pete won game 1 with his zombies deck against Teemo Energy. Now he's facing down a Glorybringer with a couple of zombies in play. Liliana's Mastery pumping his team. How do we feel about this board state?
It seems like a very close battle. I mean, Liliana's Master is excellent against Portal Energy, but Glorybringer is excellent against zombies. So they're both kind of playing their Haymaker 5-drops. And it's a lot about who plays them first, basically. And it seems like Pete Ward is on the play here. Or he's not on the play, but he played his Liliana Masters first. Because as we can see, Pete is leading by 1-0. And I assume Michael didn't choose to be on the draw here. And we're gonna see if he can follow this up with something. Okay,
a Crypt Breaker and a Dark Salvation. I like it.
Wow, this is a huge turn for Pete. Not only does he get to kill the Glorybringer, he also adds 6 more power to the board with that Dark Salvation, and together with the Crypt Breaker, he can draw a card this turn. It's incredible turn.
This is literally
Pete.
Everything that you want in Magic. You kill creatures, you make creatures, you draw cards, you win the game.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
All right, looks like Glorybringer number 2 looking to avenge his big brother.
I think this might be a little bit too late though. I mean, this is gonna exert. Say that he exerts and kills one of the zombies. Hopefully he wants to get that Crypt Breaker. So say if he gets Crypt Breaker, that leaves 4 zombies back, which all have 3 power, and together with that, if they're Deadlands, they can take care of Rogue Refiner. That's actually lethal. But if he gets a 3/3 zombie, that's still 11 damage. So I think this is just lethal for Pete on the board. It's possible that Mikey could have thought through his decision a little bit more. I believe I saw a Relivertos, if I'm not mistaken, in his hand, which meant that sure, maybe his chances would have been excellent, but he could have at least survived for this turn. So I think Michael didn't really think this sequence of turns through, and didn't think that Pete could actually just finish it off.
These zombies, they keep coming back. It's just in their nature, I suppose.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing they're doing. And at this point, they're taking for a bunch of damage too.
Yeah. It's not the first zombie that gets you, it's the 5,000 that have stood behind it.
Yep. Ooh, almost forgot to draw a card. Not that it matters on this board much, but
sometimes it's about sending a message, though. And if the message is, I like drawing cards, to be honest, we already had it. We'd already received it a while ago.
So I believe Pete drew a Dark Salvation as well. So if no Deadlands wasn't lethal, but which it is.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely lethal.
Yeah,
sorry, that was a Crypt Breaker, but
let me count the ways, says Pete Ward. If near Deadlands, pay for sacrifice it. -2, -1/-1 counters on target creature and opponent controls.
Yep. So you can select that scavenging rounds and get rocking. We'll see if Pete figures it out here. Seems like he's doing some counting on his turn here.
Better safe than sorry.
Yep. I mean, I believe that's the only way Michael can, of course, survive, is that if Pete doesn't figure it out, and he might not. Seems like he's gearing up for using 5 mana here, which usually means an if no Deadlands and
Alternatively, if it did mean a Liliana's mastery, that pumps the team quite a bit too. As it stands, though, there's the handshake. Pete Ward defeating Mikhail Dimakos, the 4th seed, defeating the 5th seed, and he will be advancing to the semi-finals. We've got some fine players that are going to be in the latter stages of this tournament. Looks like there's a handshake also there from Quentin Martin over in the match on the other side. We'll find out what the final result of that one was. Quentin Martin apparently has won that match, that meaning that our quarterfinals, looking at that feature match area, all done. This next round, it's kind of crunch time. This is where someone is going to lock up their place in the World Magic Cup, and of course after that we'll lock up our champion. Do not go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages.